Welcome to the Digital Revolution, and today I'm really excited. We have a guest here on the Revolution, my amazing wife and partner, Eve, and she has just written a new book, Year of No Garbage. This is the third book in a series that she's been doing. The first, Year of No Sugar, second, Year of No Clutter, and now, Year of No Garbage.
Yes. In this series.
And we're going to talk about this book today, how the environment and garbage all impacts us as film, digital, hybrid photographers. So Eve, tell us about the project.
Year of No Garbage. What did we do as a family? We decided, I convinced my family to go for an entire year without throwing anything away. And that was a real tremendous challenge. It was a bigger challenge than any of the ones we had ever done previously. And I learned a tremendous amount. We as a family learned a tremendous amount and became much more aware of the materials that constitute our everyday life and functioning in so many ways.
And as you always say, there's no such thing as away.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
You know, that we live on a finite planet. And so when we say we're throwing something away, where does it go? It's got to go somewhere. So we have landfills, we have incinerators. It's always going somewhere. And usually that somewhere is not a very good place, especially if you're talking about plastic. And that is one of the biggest takeaways from Year of No Garbage, is that plastic is enemy number one. Why is that? Because plastic does not degrade. It breaks up, but it does not break down. It turns into microplastics. So we can burn it, but then we're releasing toxic fumes into the air and creating toxic ash. It's a problem that we've created that's not going away.
So I started thinking about myself as a photographer and what sort of burden am I putting on the environment and climate? Because the reality is, as Eve said, plastic doesn't go away. And so I started looking at my process. Now, those of you that know me know that I'm a huge film junkie and a huge vintage camera nut. The nice part about a vintage camera is that it's a durable good. This product was made, this is a Veltavatour from the 1930s, and it still works as good as it did in the 1930s. Everything about this camera, from the leather bellows to the metal construction, is very viable and usable in 2023.
This is a more sustainable technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's take a look at some items here that I've set aside that I want us to take a look at. One of the first ones is one that should be recognizable to everybody, and this is just a 35 millimeter plastic film canister. So Eve, hold that. Did you know that at one time these came in beautiful metal canisters? Sometimes they were actually wrapped in a paper cardboard combination. The nice thing about metal is recyclable forever. Additionally, the canisters are just freaking cool. Eve, tell us why the plastic canisters suck.
The problem with plastic in general is that only 5% of plastics created get recycled in any way. Those are shocking numbers that I think everyone needs to be aware of.
My understanding is that you have to add new plastic and materials to this, and you're making a franking material.
That's exactly right. And what a lot of people don't realize is that plastic is made from fossil fuels and toxic chemicals. So all plastic is going to be, over time, emitting microparticles of plastic and emitting toxic chemicals. So when we recycle our plastics, we are also accelerating that breaking down and emitting of toxic chemicals.
I'm just going to say it right now. We need to go back to metal canisters. This makes so much more sense. Most film canisters come in black containers.
That's true. And black plastic is usually a number 5. There is no way that is getting recycled in any universe.
So the vast majority of these type materials are ending up where?
In the landfill or in the incinerator.
Or in the ocean.
Or in the ocean.
And I'd really like to encourage all manufacturers to seriously consider bringing back metal like this because it's sustainable. Film itself, here's a little end of film. Negatives I'm not so concerned about in terms of the materials because you don't get rid of your film. It's the kind of thing that once you process it, you have it in a binder and you go back and you reference it. So this is not something that really ends up in the garbage, except for these little tiny clips. The little tiny tips of your film, these end up in your garbage, and these things will be in your garbage for all time. forever.
Yes, they're not breaking down. They might break up. They might be microplastics in the landfill, in the environment, and also in our bodies.
Another one, if you shoot 120 film, and this is a tough one for me because I shoot a ton of 120, these little plastic foil containers that the 120 film comes wrapped in to keep it hermetically sealed. The problem is that this is an extruded material, a multi-layer.
It's a multi-layer.
Yeah.
So in fact, it's not just one thing, it is several things, micro thin layers that are pressed together
And
to
this
create that packaging.
is not recyclable.
No, not at all.
So this will forever live in a landfill.
Right.
Additionally, 120 paper backing. I found this really upsetting because I have examples here of 120 film and huge 4-inch roll. This is all just this is old. This is all from like the 20s and 30s. But really prior to like the 50s and 60s, all 120 film was backed with just paper. And in recent years, what's happened, and this is just a few rolls from this last week. I have all of this. This is 120 backing material. All of this.
Okay, so this, again, this is extruded material. So you've got micro thin layers that have been scientifically smooshed together of paper and plastic.
Yep.
Probably several kinds of plastic, actually.
It's more stable. I'm sure it's better for preservation. I'm sure it produces less static. You know, I contacted most of the major film manufacturers, asking them about this material, asking them, you know, why it can't be paper, and I got a lot of scientific answers for it. But the reality is, this is a real problem because we produce a lot of 120 paper backing material, and this will live forever in a landfill. There's nothing you can do with it. Unless you can find a craft project, you know, this is truly waste.
Yeah.
Another thing that's interesting is when you look at a 120 roll of film here, let me pull this out, and you get to the core. This core is black plastic.
Yeah.
Now, this core could be repurposed and reused by the manufacturers, but more often than not, where does this go? In the landfill. In the old days, film cores used to be made of wood and metal, or just metal. Once again, indefinitely reusable. And I'm calling on film manufacturers, find a way to go back to metal cores like this.
What I love about this is that it shows that there is another way that we can do things. Often, when you ask a question about something like this, people, oh, well, we've just done it. There's no other way to do it.
Right.
It's impossible. No, it's been done. All we have to do is look to the past.
Yep. And another thing too, I know people are going to ask about like inkjet materials. Inkjet cartridges are recyclable. Inkjet paper, if it's matte surface, is recyclable. Or what I do a lot is I take things like, oh look, an old test target, and I make notes on the back of it. It's really depressing when you realize that.
All the way.
Yeah, but I would not say that digital is a better way forward in any means. I would say that both digital and analog have their problems. And I think that as long as you and I as artists are aware of what those problems are, we can hopefully advocate to the industry to say, we want you to change these things. We'd like to have a better option. 40%
of the new plastics created each year are created for packaging. And so stuff like this, that seems like low-hanging fruit. Like we ought to be able to see, but that's paper.
This is paper, and this is definitely, I know that. This is definitely recyclable. But once again, it's packaging that took energy to produce all this.
Packaging.
Yep. All right, so in conclusion, buy the book, buy the book, buy the book. But now, Eve, if there's one sort of parting bit of wisdom that you learned while writing this awesome book, would you please share it with the group right now?
I think that one of the biggest takeaways is that in our current existing society, individual responsibility is terribly important. And it's going to be something you're going to see emphasized on Earth Day and other sustainability actions, personal responsibility. What can I do today? That is really important. But what is also just as important and pivotal is that we work towards action on a corporate level and on a governmental legislative level. Because this stuff, this plastic, is not going away, right? It's too inexpensive, it's too easy, it's too convenient, it's cheap. And fossil fuels are subsidized by the government. So we need to work on bigger picture as well as individual actions.
Go shoot some film.